If you want to, one of the things I teach a lot of workshops, not normally for astrology. So I'm going to give an intro about myself, and then I'm going to head to the chat. You can start throwing things there. But the questions I ask whenever I teach anything is, what drew you to this workshop and what do you most want to get out of it? So I'll put that in the chat as well. Okay, so you can answer that. The more you answer, the more I can personalize everything that I do here for you specifically. My name's Jessa Messina. Outside of being an astrologer, I have a corporate wellness company and I have an app. And so I love just sharing information. A lot of my background is in understanding the nervous system and how we can heal by understanding the health of our nervous system. In corporate wellness, I teach a lot of workshops and yoga, meditation, mindfulness, breath work, all that kind of stuff as well. And astrology has just been a passion of mine for a long time. And I sort of always did it on the side. And now I'm getting to do a lot more of that right at the forefront. And I have a little monthly astrology club. You can also book readings with me, and I'll share QR codes for that later. So now we have a lot of summer transits. So what you're going to get out of today, we are going to talk a lot about Mercury retrograde, Chiron going into Taurus, Jupiter going into Leo, and the eclipses. And all of that sort of paints the picture with the backdrop of all the other things and that have already been happening this year. A lot of you know about this being the year of the horse, the fire horse, and you've probably already started to feel the effects of that. The astrology that's happening this summer is only going to light that on fire a lot more. And I'm going to really teach you about how that's happening. So let me head over to the comments. Actually, I'm going to tell you one other thing, how to use this workshop kind of background. The way that I work with astrology is that what we really want to look at are how all of this, like how we work with the planets. So if I'm from South Florida and we learned how to swim really, really early because ocean and pools and everything else, you're in the water like as a baby. And one of the first things they teach you is what to do, not when you're a baby, but when you're a kid, what to do if there's a riptide. You want to sort of let yourself relax into it and work with and not against the water. And what that really means is that you aren't fighting it. If you fight it, you're going to get exhausted and you're going to be taken down by it. It doesn't mean you don't go underwater. You still do. And it's still scary, but you know how to work with it and you will find your way back to shore. Astrology, especially the painful, seemingly painful, can be painful outer planets like Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto can feel like a riptide. And I want to give you the guidance so you know how to work with these planets. It's almost like we put ourselves out there. We have open hands saying to the planet, like, what do you want from me? What do you want to teach me? How can I learn? And when you understand that framework, it's so much less bad. And I'm going to talk you through examples of what working and not working with the planets looks like. And then we're going to talk about that today. The next piece is there are always breadcrumbs for you. So I'm going to go through different astrology and, astrology of our past to help us understand what we're experiencing now, because there are always times before it. Think about if you have ever hosted a dinner party. The first time you did it, it was probably so weird. You were like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of all of these things. Like I didn't have the right lighting and I didn't have enough food for people, or I didn't invite, the right combination of guests. You do it several times and then you get it. Astrology is like that too. For many of you, this is not your first rodeo with understanding Mercury retrograde. It may still get to you, but you can like laugh about it a little bit. You understand the context and you have breadcrumbs in the forest to find your way back. You don't feel like you're lost in the forest. So those are the two metaphors that I want to work with. One, I don't want you to feel like you're lost in the forest. I want you to find the breadcrumbs. And I don't want you to feel like you're being pulled under with the riptide. I want you to feel like you can move through the water. So let's check out. We've got a lot of feedback in the chat, and I'm going to go through this really quickly. And it'll probably highlight, what's happening with us. So see more about how Jupiter entering Leo will impact based on my chart. When we get to that, I'm going to sort of talk through, folks can share their rising signs. You can tell me a little bit more. We won't get too personal with that, but there will definitely be a Q&A. So I'm going to come back to these then as well. But absolutely, we're going to talk about Jupiter and Leo. That literally just happened today. We had Mercury go retrograde yesterday. So this is the perfect time to talk about summer astrology because we're like in the absolute thick of it right now. Okay, seems like astrological tumultuousness time. I personally have a lot of major life decisions upcoming, and we can talk about days to make decisions and things like that, see how the transits are impacting myself and my husband, he's here too, and the collective in the US and global politics. Part of why I love to read these things out loud is because the world is so crazy and you are not alone. And when you hear other people, their voices, what they're asking, what they're curious about, it helps you, whether you're watching this as a recording or you're here now, to really be connected. That is the most important antidote and the most important part of healing. And we all go to astrology to heal. That's why we're here. Like, how do I do better? How do I work with this differently? How do I see myself differently? It's the outer planets all being in air and fire signs for a year, including this summer. Okay, I wasn't sure the question there, but it's true. I've always been interested in astrology and our soul's relationships with the planet Earth, etc. And now I want to learn more. You got it. And that's a great reason to be here. I'm in the building phase of my spiritual journey. I also want to know how Leo will affect my chart in life. You got it. That's like my favorite thing to talk about today. I love the idea of being prepared for summer through astrology, and I want to get a good game plan for these upcoming transits. Awesome. Help me understand myself and the world more astrologically, especially with Chiron and Taurus and my Saturn in Aries, and I'm in my Saturn return. Well, okay, Saturn return, folks. Alexa, I know you're in your Saturn return. Isn't this the coolest thing that you get a break while you get something else? So all my Saturn return friends, you feel like you're probably just getting like hazed. But the beautiful part is Chiron leaving Aries, at least one thing's getting easier for you. So celebrate that. If anyone's in their Saturn return, can you just like take a deep breath and just be like, oh, I'm so grateful. Something out there is getting easier. Help me okay, we got that one. I'm getting more into astrology, so I'm saying yes to things. I love everything you shared on the Laura career panel. So you and Laura brought me here. Oh my God, thank you so much. I'm very happy you're here. To see how the transits will affect me and the many different areas of my life this summer. I also want to know what this summer's astrological forecast holds. Ready to learn more about my own chart and looking forward to learning more about incorporating it in my life. LOL, the universe is so funny. I just did my monthly Akashic Records reading for July. Well, I want to know what was so funny. I want to be in on the joke, but it is so funny, right? Like the way it shows you things, always funny. Okay. Danielle wants to know where you did that. So please, Drew, tell Danielle. Oops, July's energy, and they showed me a dinner party. Oh, wait, the universe is so funny. I'm not... Oh, dinner party for summer love. Okay, I might be like confused. Must be love, that synergy. I perked up immediately when Jessa said dinner party. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad I hit the nail on the head with that. I also want to see how I can translate it into my birth chart. You got it. Astrology is so cool. Oh, okay. All right, great. And now I see there's some conversation here. So wonderful. All right. I just got such a strong feel for what everyone's looking for, and I'm so happy about that. So we know all the different pieces of, we've got Mercury, the big highlights, Mercury retrograde, Jupiter in Leo, Chiron in Taurus, and eclipses. But I want to talk a little bit overviewy. So if we are talking about what this year holds and what is happening this year, one of the things that we want to look back at is this fire horse year. Now, the fire horse year, what's so interesting about the Chinese astrology to the Western astrology overlap is that they're both saying the same exact thing in such a clear way. It isn't always that overlapping and clear, but this one is crystal clear. It really wants, it's really iterating and reiterating that. And so I want to kind of, if this is a good place too, if you want to like take a note or something, what Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, and moving through that energy is really about is ego. And ego is not a bad thing. Ego is a thing we want to be healthy. We want to nurture and figure it out. So when we're on the Aries Libra axiom, the difference is self and other. And do we know how to work with that so that we're really interdependent? We have a healthy sense of self, and we have the ability to take that self and interact with other people. So this year, what we want to plant the seed, and this is the foundation, because the foundation of this year and how we use that springboards us into, it's almost like we're taking the foundation of this year and then we're adding on these new layers of the new summer astrology. But you're not building from scratch. You're building from the foundation of what the year already taught us and where it already led us. So this is a year for how to advocate for yourself. Saturn in Aries says definitely advocate for yourself, especially because everyone else is experiencing Saturn in Aries. So there's a lot of self-focus. So you want to learn how to advocate for yourself, but how can you do that without being self-centered? What does it mean to advocate for yourself, but also balance where you see yourself versus other? Working with the ego means, let me tell you, this is the craziest thing that took me a very long time to learn, is that you may see two totally different people and they both have ego issues. One is being totally full of yourself and always referencing, oh, well, I did this. Well, I'm, people who are so I focused. But honestly, the flip side of the coin is the same problem, which is having low self-esteem or being so overly self-sacrificing. So what we want to do is, it's not about low self-esteem or overly self-sacrificing. It's not about being too self-centered or being full of yourself. It's finding this blend where the self gets a healthy, beautiful expression. How do we do that? How do we give the self this healthy and beautiful expression? And that's what Saturn in Aries is going to ask you to do. And it's going to do it through poking whatever ego wounds you have. Why is that so important right now? Well, Jupiter is entering Leo, and this is only going to, wherever Jupiter enters, it expands. So that's a mostly good thing, but it can also be a dangerous thing. And now Saturn in Aries is going to be meeting up with Jupiter in Leo, especially like starting now, because they're in close degrees. We've only just started Saturn in Aries, so it's still in its earlier degrees. So when these things are happening, it's a beautiful sense of flow because the planets are getting along. Whenever they're in the same element, they're getting along with each other, which is so lovely. But the bad side of all of that is that, everything's expanded. So whatever lessons Saturn in Aries is already starting to give you, Jupiter and Leo will give you a little more flow and support, but it will also make those bigger. Now, those, depending if you're in your Saturn return, this is going to be more personal. If you have personal planets in Aries, this is also going to be more personal. But it's also like I think it's going to be kind of awesome. You just want to be careful for those things. Again, if you take care of them, you will get rewarded. If you ignore them, you will not. This is not the time to sort of look past those things. And I want to say this is like a judgment-free zone. If you are someone who's like, yeah, I'm too self-centered sometimes, or, I really think from my own point of view, or I'm sort of lost in my own pain. I don't think about other people all the time. That sounds really hard, but we're just like messy humans with trauma trying to figure it out. And so it's a really normal experience that your life is a journey of molding and shaping your ego. And it's usually done through having your ego poked or harmed or not properly built or developed in your childhood. And when you treat Saturn with Aries with care, this whole journey, because the next year, Saturn in Aries and Jupiter in Leo will be in these fire signs. And think of it like this. Imagine people going to a pep rally and like they're just all shouting the same thing at the same time and they're super supportive and they're there. You feel that and you're like, yay, that feels so good. You're like supported by those fans in the crowd. But imagine that they're like angry and they hate your team and they're screaming horrible things. It feels just as bad. So you want, now that they're together, they're riling each other up, and you want it to be in a positive way. And that's by showing respect to the planets. And that's by showing respect to Saturn and Aries. I bet that's not what some of you, I like to bring in what you're not necessarily going to see on all the TikToks and astrology blogs and things elsewhere, because there's a lot of angles to this. And there's a sort of depth that not everyone's going to like grasp. So that's why I wanted to bring this in. Now, Jupiter in Leo is going to layer on top of the Saturn in Aries. And what Jupiter in Leo brings in, it's going to show you what you're loyal to and who's loyal to you. So those are going to be big issues at the forefront. If you invest in the right things and you give your loyalty to the right things in the right ways, that is going to be rewarded times 10x. So the lessons you learn on loyalty will provide rewards. It's also going to be a summer of fun. I think the last time I had like a super, there have been a couple summers that stand out. I'm not even going to say because I don't want to give you that association, but I want you to think about like when you had a banger summer where you were just like, this, the music out is great. I had so many fun adventures with my friends. Maybe you were like having really fun drinks on a rooftop bar, or you got a lot of beach days or things like that. Jupiter in Leo has the ability to give you that. And the great thing is that it will actually be in Leo until the end of July next year. So you'll kind of have June and July with this same vibe next summer too. This can be, if you are planning to balance your nervous system with good, nourishing fun, I highly encourage that. So the two pieces of advice I've given you so far is really learn your own ego and your own ego issues and care for them and listen to them. And part of what ego issues will make you do is judge your ego, but don't. Because listen, there's 35 of us on this call and we all have them. And we're all just like figuring out this human experience of how to deal with it. But tend to it, journal, look at yourself in the mirror, understand where is this getting in your way, and let that be the springboard so that you can have the best summer ever. Fun will nourish you. Fun will nourish you. If there was a time to let yourself, and your fun might be different. If you're more introverted, you're like, I don't want a weekend rooftop with a bunch of people. I crave something else. Figure out what that looks like for you, because sometimes fun is healing. And this is one of the summers that will be finally a bomb summer. Yeah, totally. So that's a big thing that I want you to look at. And that's really the biggest thing is, how do you let yourself have fun? What comes up when you're having fun? How do you let yourself express yourself? Are there ways? You might know a lot of Leos. I know a lot of Leos who are not like center stage, high drama. They're actually really, they have a sort of meek side to them. Leo is not just this, I think we give it this stereotypical, a Leo enters the room and you think that, you've been like, they're just sucking up all the air. And I'm like, I don't think so. Leo is actually the part of all of us that has Leo energy, brings warmth into the room. Leo is ruled by the sun. So the most positive manifestation of Leo is vibrance and warmth and playfulness and joy. There's a very childlike energy, and Aries has it too. There is, what we want to return to is the childlike innocence and joy. That not only heals us, but it heals our relationships as well. My only Leo energy is North Node, haha. Well, that's not such a bad thing. In this lifetime, you're really meant to figure out what to do with that. When you don't have a lot of anything in your chart in the sign of your North Node, it's really asking you in this lifetime to have the chance to really play with that. Like it's saying, okay, explore. This is maybe something new. It may feel like you're not cooking in your own kitchen, but it's the kitchen you're meant to be cooking in. So take the time to learn it. It's not saying you don't know it because you don't belong. It's saying you don't know it yet, but you are 100% meant to. Okay. And let's see, my Leo. Okay, we're getting everyone's Leo placements. I'm going to come back to that in a Q&A so we can keep moving. Alexa, will you move to the next one? Okay, Chiron entering Taurus. So I told you all about the Saturn and Aries thing. Chiron in Aries was kind of doing the same thing, to be honest. So the most beautiful part of the whole Saturn and Aries piece is that, like, you've already been hazed. This is not new. I find Chiron to be more triggering and more intense than Saturn. It just lasts for a lot longer. So now I know this slide says June 19th to September 17th. We actually had it enter Taurus last year. Then it retrograded back into Aries. It's going forward until September 17th. It'll retrograde back into Aries, and then it will move forward and stay there for over a decade. Wherever Chiron is, it doesn't play. It stays there for a long time. So we feel the lessons for a long time, but it's more of a subtle kind of dulling sort of thing. Mercury retrograde is so loud and intense because it's like 20 days, you know, so it's like hardcore for like 3 weeks and then it's gone. And we have the shadow phase before and after. And so about a third of the year is saturated in some type of Mercury retrograde energy. So we're like in it, and then 2/3 of the time we're not, and then we're in it again. So when it comes fast and hard and leaves. These planets that stay a long time, it's almost like this dull, constant thing that you sort of get used to, but it's always sort of there. If you've ever had any like chronic pain that's subtle and not really loud, that's that. I know that's a terrible way to look at it, but it's true. So the lessons and I made a note for this too, because I'm not a huge asteroid person, but it is an important one. And I have my moon in Aries. So I was like super hazed because it was like a late degree. And I know what that personally felt like when Chiron literally went over my moon and back and over it and back. And so, you know, I think it's important when astrologers come on here and they speak from their lived experience too. How useful is anything just in a book, right? So one of the big things, you know, this summer when we are really looking at Chiron and we're looking at it is to look at when Chiron comes into the picture, it's like a trigger. And if you've ever been triggered by something, oftentimes you don't really know what's happening. It's like something's kind of hijacked your body and you feel a flood of feelings that might be larger than the situation you're in. That doesn't mean you're nuts. You're not crazy. Something is triggering you. Something is poking something really deep in you. And it's asking to be looked at. But it's hard because you're not in a really grounded space where you can sit quietly across from that thing and say, this is curious. What's happening there? It can feel flooding. They talked about the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Those are our trauma responses, but we also have flood. And that's where it just absolutely floods your system. When you first deal with anything in Chiron, so if you have early degree Taurus placements or honestly any early degree fixed sign placements, Chiron's going to kind of be going over those. And you may actually feel when the first time Chiron goes over, or even when you're a few degrees prior to it happening, you may feel like a flood, actually. You may feel that the first time. But it goes over something, there's several passes that it goes over. And by the second or the third, or even at the end of that first pass, you start to feel more like you're in the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. You're like a little bit less intense than that flooded feeling. So I want to say that as well. Like if you are in, you know, when your Saturn return first started, any of these hard transits start, you may start in the flood period and then you get to the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So just note that if you have the people most impacted are going to be early degree fixed signs, and anyone who had late degree, you know, Aries or Cardinal signs is kind of getting a little bit of a final breathing room. But we will all be struck by this and we may all feel it at some level, because where Chiron in Aries was like, who are you, your ego wounds, but Chiron in Taurus, what we're going to see on a more global level is everybody in this sort of scarcity, like they're going to have all the wounds that come up about your resources. Do I feel secure in the world? Not do I feel a sense of like self-esteem, but do I actually feel secure with my resources, which is very different. It's like from first to second house. I think we're getting a lot of AI disruptions already, and Uranus and Gemini trining Pluto and Aquarius are both like, let's go all in. I think those things are only going to be faster, harder, stronger. And the thing is, we're in a very new stage of this. So a lot of the AI things are going to do well, and a lot of them are going to flop. We're in that moment where, you know, you don't want to bet too heavily on any one thing because you don't know which ones are going to grow and which ones aren't. And we're in that sort of new high risk space. So I think it's no coincidence that we're also entering Chiron and Taurus, where that's kind of messing with people. We don't have that grounding stability, and it's actually bringing up. My advice for Chiron and Taurus is look at what you personally need to feel grounded and stable what are those anchor things for you? So like get really clear on how much money do you need to live? And what does your, what makes you feel anchored in your community? What makes you feel grounded in your own physical home and space? What are those sensual things? One of the things that I think will be very popular is somatics and people getting really in touch with their bodies because we want to feel embodied. Taurus always wants us to feel embodied. If you've ever done those exercises like one thing I can see, one thing I can feel, one thing I can hear, one thing I can touch, or whatever, those kind of mindfulness exercises. Even though I'm a mindfulness person, I don't always practice those particular types, but those are great things. Anything that connects you to your senses and allows you to feel embodied and say like, the world may change around me, but I feel safe within myself. I have the resources I need. Other things that I would do in Chiron and Taurus is like literally garden, grow your own food, check your bank account frequently, feel comfortable looking at your own money and resources and just really understanding what that means to you. If you wanted to get better at learning about investing, or saving, if you have a 401k, what is it doing or not doing? Is there something better you could be? These little things, you are going to feel so empowered by taking time to do that. And you've got a long journey, but don't wait. Chiron and Taurus is like, I'm going to poke you. Why don't you act first before it pokes you, right? If you balance and bring that beautiful, healthy Taurian energy in your life, you won't feel. That is how you move with the riptide versus letting it pull you under. Taurus rising and garden is my personality this summer. I experienced my Chiron return in May. Okay, that's great. And when we, a Chiron return is a big, big deal. A lot of, are you Gen X? Because that is, I think, where I know millennials are going to be coming up on that. It's kind of a midlife, or yeah, Gen X. It's a midlife moment. There's a lot of different transits going through that Chiron return. So for everyone, do you want to describe what your Chiron return is to give people a vibe? Like if you were to say a sentence on how you experience your Chiron return. I'll come back to that, but I think it helps paint the picture. One of the other things I love to do, and when other people have been through a transit, talk to them. Ask them how it felt in their body. Ask them what they learned from it. Ask them if they would know one thing going into it differently. What would that be? This is what community is for. Okay, my grandma got scammed yesterday, bad, who I live with, and I really feel like this is another push to possibly figure out my own move. I am really sorry that happened. And I think that sense of security and all of that, I appreciate stories here because that's a reverberation. Do I feel secure in my home? How does my body feel where I am? What does safety look like for me? And you will get little signs of what it is not. And the universe will give you those little pushes. So keep that in mind. Okay. Can we switch to the next slide, please? Thank you so much, Alexa. I really do feel, I didn't realize how funny it would be. Alexa, next slide. Do you get that a lot when people, it's really funny. I don't know if you like that they named it.
Yes, I get it literally all the time, but it's okay.
Well, I'm going to try not to reiterate that too much then. Okay, so we've got two eclipses, August 12th and August 27th. You're not going to have not a lit summer. Your summer is going to be loud. I think things are going to move really fast in July, but the fabric of July and the fabric of August are going to be extremely different. It was only June 19th that we had Chiron move into Taurus. And it's sort of a welcome thing to get a little more earth energy somewhere. So we're not so in that fire. But then literally 10 days later, we had Jupiter enter Leo. So there's a lot of loudness and change. And then, of course, Mercury retrograde is happening. So July has one sort of sense. Here's how I would define July versus August. July with Mercury retrograde, there's a couple things going on. I know that's the next slide. Actually, do you mind if I go to the Mercury retrograde and I'll come back to the eclipses? Because that one's happening now. So we're in this. We just got in it yesterday. And this is telling the same story. We had this is the breadcrumb piece going back. The last Mercury retrograde that we had was February 26th to March 20th. So look back at your journals, your calendars, your photos. What was going up? What was coming up? What were you realizing? Because Mercury retrogrades tell you a story throughout the year. This year, the Mercury retrogrades are all happening in water signs, and coincidentally, so is our Venus retrograde. So what that means is there's a lot of, when something's retrograde, it's asking us to revise, to release, to kind of step back and go in and make changes and revisions. It's not plowing forward, it's pulling back. So there's a lot of energy this year that's about plowing forward, and that is in our fire signs. I'm sure your life looks drastically different from where it looked in January, for better, worse, or just it's a new scene. It's like a new scene change. It's like when you're in a play and then you move from one part to the next. That's exactly what this is doing. So you're seeing a different, personality of the year, but it's still asking you go back and look at those lessons. I'm going to put the dates in the chat again for you. And these were all in Pisces. So now, of course, it's in Cancer. I find that to be a little bit easier, but these are, really a revision of looking at your inner world and your relationships. Whenever we're in the water signs, it's a huge deep dive into our emotional landscape and our interpersonal landscape. So I want you to notice already, I'm having some epiphanies and things coming up about my own interpersonal ways of dealing with people and the emotions that I have with that and the fabric of my relationships, to be honest. What needs to change? What's coming up? And can I make space for it, to listen to it? That's what this retrograde wants you to do. So you're going to see a lot of moving parts, but also with Chiron and Jupiter moving at such a similar time, we're seeing a very big landscape change, all while trying to make revisions on something else. So there are a lot of moving parts. The end of July will look nothing like the beginning of July. So we start July tomorrow. I promise you, life will feel very different by the end of July. Don't hold on tight. The other thing I'll say is that we just had Jupiter in Cancer. So now that we're having this Mercury retrograde in Cancer, it's asking you to say, what did you grow last year? For an entire year with Jupiter in Cancer, something in our life got bigger. What do you kind of need to tweak? What are you happy with that growth? And then that's one piece. And the other piece is looking at, what did the last retrograde bring up for you? What emotional journey are you on this year? And how is this another chapter of that same journey? So that's really the focus. And then, of course, Jupiter in Leo is like, hello, go ahead and take anything you need out from this retrograde, because I'm trying to get you ready for a new expansion. And if you are holding space for things you don't want anymore, this isn't going to be a good look. So it really wants you to clear that out. All right, let's go back to Chiron, because we have a Chiron return friend here who's going to give us the inside scoop. Sorry, I had to think for a second. I think for me with the Chiron return, it forced me to look fully at stepping into my gifts, including my spiritual gifts. As a kid, I was not celebrated for them. Now I've 100% embraced them. Honestly, there's nothing like wounds come with grief. Grief comes with blessings. Grief comes with reclaimed joy. And so I want you, whether you have your Chiron return ahead or you are a little scared by this wounded warrior asteroid energy that sounds very difficult, the other side of it is beautiful. Thank you so much, Kristen, for sharing that, and no need to apologize. Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Alexa. We'll go back to the eclipses now. So that's the landscape for July. The landscape for August is fully eclipse season. When we're like a week before the eclipse, we are in the season. Like we are feeling it. Honestly, 2 weeks before. I would call the eclipses like a 6-week cycle because there's 2 weeks before, the 2 weeks of the eclipses, and the 2 weeks after. So it's basically going to go well from, the start of August through Labor Day. We're going to be in this wild eclipse energy. And the last time we had an eclipse summer, we're going to there's sort of two storylines going on. One of them is going to be all about the Aquarius and Leo. The other is going to be all about the Pisces and Virgo. So we're going to start with the one in Leo, and I have these dates pulled up for you. I'm going to put them in the chat. This is the last time. So if you can remember you probably don't remember, I don't know, I barely do, but I've actually done research to look at this before. The 2017 through 2019. Does anyone remember that great eclipse that everyone was like wearing glasses for, the Great American Eclipse? That was part of this whole storyline. So everything we went through from 2017 to 2019, there was so much there. We had a few like that were kind of, I remember the ones, I'm pretty sure, was it in 2018? There were some that were weaving in and out of the next set of eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn, but for the first time, like we were getting this major time period of Leo and Aquarius. So I want you to really go back. Yes, this is what it was. Yeah, here we go. 2017. Yeah. So I want you to go back to your calendars, your photos, your journals, and really look at what was happening. We did have a little bit of it this year too. We had, I think I remember, maybe I didn't write this date, but we did have this, we had one eclipse in Aquarius this year. So we've already gotten a little bit of that flavor, but I think what's going to be more of a storytelling for you is going back to the 2017 through 19, because this is a new story we're entering. This is a new chapter, and we're going to be in it for the next several years. The way eclipses work is it's 2 years that stay in certain signs. And in those 2 years, there is just an unpacking of different lessons. Astrology always has like 5 or 6 different stories going on, but don't we too? You might have one thing going on in your romantic relationship, but something else going on in your career and something else going on with your health or your family. So that's why like different houses get lit up with different things. Sometimes one thing's doing really well and the other thing's on fire. Sometimes they're in conjunction. So I want you to look at where you have this Leo and Aquarius energy, and then just being really aware and looking at like, how did this play out for you? These are the breadcrumbs in the forest for you. Okay. The next one is going to be more towards Labor Day. And I think that one's going to be way more emo. So when you get towards the end of summer, give yourself some space, and the other thing about eclipses, so Mercury retrograde, if you have July travel plans, in some ways, great. Give yourself a break. You won't be so frustrated when something goes off with your email, but give yourself extra time. That's sort of the rule for July, is follow the rules of the retrograde. The rules for August are just be ready to be, July is going to have little inconveniences or little revelations or little things like that. But August is going to be much more like, almost like a tornado comes at certain points. Things will be turned upside down, doors will open, doors will close, surprises will happen. And I don't want you to necessarily be scared. Trust the rhythm of the stars. Things are meant to be opening for you and things are meant to be closing. And if you listen very carefully and you start listening now, you look back at maybe those dates from 2017 through 2019 and start to understand what that means in your life, you're picking back up. Maybe you can be really open and receptive and allow those things to happen with more ease and gentleness. Now, we've been in this story for a while, since 2024, with the Virgo and the Pisces. Here's the list of dates there. So you're going to get one story August 12th, and then we're going to move back into this other story. Sometimes the lunar and the solar eclipse are in the same axis. This one, because we're sort of transitioning out of Virgo Pisces and into Leo Aquarius, they're sort of two different personalities. So you're going to have like two different storylines of change and unpacking. I think it's a good thing because you don't feel like you're being double hit. You kind of feel like, you know, sort of different things are going on. This one particular, the one we're having at the end of August, is very much going to mirror. Does anyone remember the lunar eclipse we had in Pisces? It was around September 9th last year. It was wild. On a political scale, if anyone remembers, that was when everything happened with Charlie Kirk. I remember whenever there's a political event that happens literally at the time of astrology, I can't not associate the astrology with the thing. But don't worry about that. I'm not going to go into anything on that, but I would like for you to look at your life and what was happening around that time, because you're going to get a little bookend that brings you more information about that. We have one more, which will be a full moon eclipse, lunar eclipse in Virgo on February 27th, but that's like the final wrap up. It's going to really be a story unpacking. Hannah says, I work in the news, so it was that. Yeah. Okay. If you work in media or the news or something like that, then that's probably all that like consumed. But if you work in different areas, you may remember that headline, but actually have associations of other things that were happening for you. Like I remember what was happening in my life that had no association with that. But it's clearer because I had, you know, that event happening too. Okay. All right, so I'm going to move into Q&A in a moment, but I want to first, would you mind moving up to the slide with the book The Reading With Me slide? So if you do want to book a reading, you get 10% off. I obviously in these, we've got, you know, about 40 people here, so it's not as easy to go super in depth. But if you want to kind of understand, well, what houses are these eclipses? What's the story being told for me? And like, where do I have Jupiter placements? The other part about Jupiter that I didn't mention is that it's opposing Pluto. So normally Jupiter is like explosion and like in a good way. It's like blessings, blessings, blessings. But when Pluto is like side-eyeing across the table at Jupiter, it's like giving it different demands. I'll talk about that in a second. But the great thing about doing readings personally is that you can really understand where this lands for you, and you can really harness that. And you also just have someone sitting across from you witnessing you and witnessing the beauty of your chart coming to life. There are no two charts that are the same. It is as rare. I think it takes 40,000 years to reproduce the exact same chart because there's 360 degrees, and your rising sun, moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, each of those occupy one of those 360 degrees. So the combination of 1 and 360 for each of those to line up, can you imagine? Even finding someone who has your same rising sun and moon. I know people who share like my rising and sun, or maybe my sun and moon, but I don't know that I've even met someone who has the exact same rising sun and moon. So there's so much uniqueness, and it's a pleasure and privilege to witness and be witnessed by those things. So definitely, if you haven't already, book a reading. We'll show more. You know, I'll show you more QR codes and ways you can participate in things. And if you know, there's also other astrologers on the Laura page. There's a whole marketplace, and you can find people for all kinds of things with tarot and Akashic record and everything else. Okay. What are your questions? Give it to me. And if you know, rather than me looking at your whole chart, because there won't be a lot of time for that, if you want to share like one placement and how something's impacting you, that way I can get more people in, or you can share like a few things, because doing a full chart reading, we won't quite have time, or I'm was going to do this for half the time, but I had so much to say. Okay. I'm a Pisces rising. I'm an Aries moon conjunct with Chiron. My Leo is in the 6th house, and with the South node only, Gemini sun, Mercury, Venus, I have been faced with many challenges with my career. Wow, 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 wow. Of course you have. Like, it's literally like you have a chart that's being hit by everything. So a fellow Aries moon over here. Hey, so when your moon is conjunct your Chiron, there's just going to be so much for you to unpack in this lifetime anyway. Um, if you're saying you have your Chiron in Aries as well. I'm not sure if you were saying like the moon was just conjunct or Chiron was just conjunct your moon, but if you have a natal placement of the moon conjunct your Chiron, that is a big, big deal. That is actually the personalization of Chiron is huge. So I don't know what kind of field you work in, but the wounded healer, the thing about it is where you have this in your chart is not only where you feel the wound, but the gift you have to give. Chiron is very much about, remember, it's a wounded healer. So the wounded becomes the healer. I would say if you work in a field with anything where you're helping other people's mental health or creating some supportive emotional healing for them, you would thrive. I don't know if you do that. You can let me know. And that's a big deal. With Leo in the 6th house, with the South Node only, having your South Node in the 6th house, it's like the way you show up for daily work, you have to be careful because you're kind of meant to be letting go of a lot of your South Node, but you also, you also have a lot of skills there. So it's hard because you want to like harness it and not overdo it, but you come into life with your South Node. Wherever you're over your South Node, you did a lot of stuff in the past life in that area and you kind of burnt it out, but that means you still know how to use it. So you just want to really harness, like, what could you do in your sleep, but maybe you shouldn't be? That's what the South Node in Leo. And when you have Jupiter coming through there, this is going to be a very familiar territory for you. And it is going to be a chance for you to redo everything, not necessarily career-wise, but daily work-wise. So I hope that lands. Gemini, Sun, Mercury, and Venus. Oh my gosh, with Uranus going through those, a lot of what I'm seeing for you is that you are getting a life makeover. So I'm not surprised. The beginning is very messy, but you have a chance to have a lot of sudden change. And with Jupiter going through your 6th house, it's a great opportunity to change your daily work. So I would lean into, and if you want to share with me what you do for your daily work, I would love to see that. But I'm going to make sure I try to get to everyone. Definitely curious what kind of demands Pluto is giving Jupiter this summer. So Pluto is all about power battles. It's also about like trauma and wounds, but I think it's really going to be about the power battles. So we are going to have relational power battles because Pluto is sitting opposite Leo. It's basically like there's something you have to jump through with other people to get to that blessing. Like it's not just a smooth path to get there. You might have to overcome some things. A great example of this might be like you get a promotion and maybe not all your coworkers are happy for you. That's like a pretty simplistic, but it's blessings and they're going to come with challenges. Now, what's the best thing if you have coworkers that aren't happy for you? You learn a lot. You learn who you share your joys with and who you keep different boundaries with. You learn how to maybe keep some things to yourself. Maybe you don't tell everyone your salary. Maybe you were like, I'm going to be a person for the people and I'm very transparent. And maybe you say, I'm not going to share that on Slack. I'm not going to tell everyone what I make. If I don't want to, I don't have to. Maybe I go to the company outing and I have a few less drinks because I want to keep my composure. Those are the kind of things like Pluto would do. And that's just one example, but I hope that helps, create a vision for you. I wonder how it'll affect my Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter fire trine. I'm a Sag rising. Saturn is in my 9th house. All right. I think you're going to have fun, Danielle. I think you're going to have fun. When Jupiter comes into, if you have a lot of fire in your chart, for all my people with big fiery charts, I hope you have the best summer of your life and let yourself. Of course, Saturn's going to kind of keep the reins in, but when Saturn is trine Jupiter, it actually is kind of nice. It's like, you're not going to go necessarily too far. Saturn never lets people go too far. So it's like you have sort of a little like safety, because Saturn is like, hey there, if you have too many drinks and sleep through your alarm, I'm going to make you feel that right away and you're not going to do it again. So I would say have fun. This year is going to be the lightest year of the Saturn in Aries now that Jupiter is in Leo. It just softens it a little. Everyone like go find the music that's going to be the music of this summer and plan something that is not fun for the sake of pleasure, fun for the sake of joy. That is what Leo wants you to know. It's not just about pleasure seeking, but joy seeking. What really gives you joy? You will get rewarded for it and it will heal you. How will Jupiter impact me as a Leo stellium? Okay, well, we are like this because I have a Leo stellium in those exact same planets, not in the 10th and 11th house, but in those same planets. So I have the same stellium as you, and I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled. And I'm thrilled for you. At the beginning of this transit, I want you to clear it out, clear it all out. What doesn't belong there should not be sitting on the shelf because you need to allow yourself to be as shiny and bright as possible. First of all, having Mars in the 10th house and Mercury is so amazing. Career is such a huge deal for you. So I want you to really, savor that. And Venus in the 11th house, I mean, you've got a dynamite chart. I love Venus in the 11th house. That is such a communal space, especially if it's not heavily negatively impacted. There should be a lot of ease with which you build community. What you want to be careful when you have Venus in the 11th house and in Leo is that you are like a fly, or you are the light that the flies come to. So you want to be careful and just curate what is coming to you. Just because you have a certain magnetism, you could also be very drained by that because there's so much coming at you. And I don't mean that in a like, everyone wants to talk to me, not in some kind of pretentious, egoic way. I mean it in this just really like, you might have something about you that people, open up and they want to be near you. And that could be very siphoning of your own energy. So just watch that because that could get even bigger. Mercury and Mars in the 10th house with all that 10th house. Yes, your career stuff is going to blow up. But again, be selective because what gets bigger, sometimes you don't want everything, go hard, but be selective. You get to be choosy this year. What can it mean for my summer Jupiter meeting with my moon in the 3rd house this year? Wow. Oh, Jupiter going through your moon. If you don't have a good therapist, get one, not because you need it, but because the potential for your healing is huge. When you get positive aspects to your moon, it allows you to have emotional growth with less of the cost. It allows you to feel a catharsis and a healing and a joy. So really like lean into it. Let's see. And in the 3rd house, it's going to be very much Mercury based. That's a Mercury based house. And so it is with like neighbors and siblings and family, but it's also your daily routines and how you think. So the 3rd house is so many broad, random things pulled into it. Taurus rising, Aquarius moon, Libra, Sun, Mars, Virgo, Venus, incredibly lost when it comes to my career. Let's see. So that would place you at an Aries in the 12th house, Pisces in the 11th house, Aquarius. Okay, so that would make a lot of sense. You have Pluto going through your 10th house. So especially in those early degrees, it's probably banging around and it is asking you, and you have your moon in the 10th house. So it's probably hard not to take work extremely personally, but you're also meant to be very emotionally engaged with it. And this is Pluto not only like is kind of a painful wound like Chiron is, but it's also a place of power. It's whenever Pluto goes through something, it's asking you to level up, level up. Where can you grow your power? And at what speed can you do that without totally flooding your nervous system? So this is a big level up. I'm sure it's confusing because things you're trying are not working and you're like, why isn't it working? The old way of doing things is very intentionally not working. And that's for a good reason. All right. I am a water, fire, and earth stellium with Leo North and Aquarius South node. I'm restarting my life. can you give me any tips on this convo for stepping into the life with my node? So first thing I'll say is, for those that are under 40, your north node is not as important because yes, it's giving you those breadcrumb moments, but you aren't fully meant to embrace that until you're like in your 40s. That's where you really come to life in a lot of ways. There's this layering of the way we come to life and come into our own in our Saturn return. And then we sort of come into our own even more when we hit the 40s. We've gone through some of these midlife crises where we've had like Pluto square Pluto, Neptune square Neptune, Uranus opposition. And so be excited, if I'm not sure what your age is, but I'm not like a fan of like going hard on nodes until that age. But I would say it's still a blessing when it lands in there. I would say get a taste of what Jupiter and Leo is, bathe in it, because it's your North Star and it's pointing you the direction to go. When people have an Aquarius South node, I find that it's easy for them to be more dissociative and distant and not connected and attached to their individual, like they may be part of a community over their individual self, whereas Leo is like embody the self. But Leo and Aquarius both embody they talk about authenticity, freedom, self-expression. There's a lot on that axis about liberation. Aquarius and Leo are the liberation signs, both of them. One is of the self, but the thing about Leo is it wants it for everyone. Like Leo believes you should be free and I should be free and we should all be free to be us. Aquarius believes you should be free and I should be free to exist how we want. And so they say it in different ways, but they mean really the same thing. And it's about ensuring that you're not depersonalizing things and leaning into your feelings as much as facts. Okay, what does the summer look like politically with these transits, specifically the United States? A lot of people are predicting a certain person's not necessarily going to make it, because with Leo going into the South node and he's a Leo rising, it's not looking good because the South node sort of is a vacuum. It sort of sucks things out rather than pumping them up. So I think that is a potential in the astrologer world. A lot of people are talking about that. So I think we're going to see a different landscape. Something's going to go on. That's going to be a headline. I don't know what it is, but there's going to be a headline with that. I also think politically, the Chiron, the bigger deal is, AI, Uranus and Gemini, and then that happening with like this flooding of change and technology at the same time as Chiron and Taurus. I think we're going to see more companies doing like sort of, they don't know what they're doing yet. They're sort of like kind of poking the universe to see what happens. And I think a lot of people are going to get kind of freaked out. And that's why, like, I wouldn't say this is a summer to take huge bets or huge risks. I would say give it a little while and see where things land, because we want to sort of more so focus on calculated risk and allowing to sit in this energy for a while. So I think there's going to be more kind of economic upheaval in the next year. And I think if you make investments or you're thinking about planning, what you think about doing long-term versus taking bets to go really big with high risk, I think like low risk, high return, thoughtful decisions in terms of finances are really important. And that's going to impact everything. It's going to impact the economy. It's going to impact political policies. So yeah, that I'm staying vague because if you go to my particular page and my workshops, I have a very strong stance. And I'll just say this, I'm a queer person, so you can imagine what that might be. But I, for the sake of this workshop, I'm not going to go too in depth, but if you do work with me, I'm happy to do that and share some of my feelings. I'm sure my bias is unable to not be here because how could it not? Okay, let's see what else we've got here. Aquarius stellium, Moon, Jupiter, Neptune, Chiron. Aquarius stellium, Jupiter, Neptune. I'm sorry, I'm not. You've got an Aquarius stellium. Oh, the Aquarius stellium is with Jupiter, Neptune, and Chiron, and your moon. So that's a lot of things happening in the same chapter as your moon. That must be really intense. And Pluto going through all of those things is a really, really big deal. Leo will be opposing your moon. And I think that's actually going to be kind of cool. When we have Pluto conjuncting all of those things for us, that's can be really intense. And I think this year will feel a little bit like a breath of fresh air because you'll get a lot of blessings to those areas of your life. So I think you should take a deep breath, and I would want to look at the degrees and see how all those are placed and how close the conjunction is and all that kind of stuff to really understand the intensity of it. Okay, I'm a Cancer sun, Pisces rising, Scorpio moon. Things have been absolute shambles and changing a lot, having a lot of friend issues and interviewing for new jobs. Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, these are big house placements for you. And also think about this. Some of your most important things, the entire picture of the year for change with revision and rewriting and things going a little differently is in the water signs. And we have one in each one. So I'm sure the story that you were embodying back in February, look at that Mercury retrograde and how that landed for you, because you're going to see a lot of those things coming up. I'm really sorry you're having a lot of friend issues and interviewing for jobs. That's so much. Again, I'd love to look at the degrees just to make sure I know which house placements are, because I'm a Placidus astrologer, which means I don't do whole sign. I really look at like what house it falls in based on the degrees. And then I would, sort of look to show where that's happening. Okay. I'm just going to kind of peek through some of these because I know that we've got a lot in here, and I want to see if there's anyone who I haven't answered anything for. Let's see, Cardinal, Aries, Leo moon. I like these kind of questions. Also, if you have a really pointed question, that really helps. Oh, Sonia. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad. I just saw your comment now that you replied from before, and I'm really glad that landed. Good. Yes, totally life change. I'm not working, but was in accounting. I'm curious too, Sonia, because that was a very specific example. If you were like, accounting is sort of what I would say the opposite of what your chart looks like to me. Like, accounting is so numbers based, and it looks like your chart opens a lot of doors for you in the other direction. So I'm kind of curious if your career was asking otherwise of you. I'm going to go to the bottom and work my way up. During the last Mercury retrograde, I went through an unexpected breakup that really rocked my world. Since then, I've been doing a lot of deep healing and trying to rebuild community, but life feels like I'm undergoing through a hard reset. Capricorn sun, Gemini moon, Cancer. Okay. I also have a Capricorn stellium in the 6th house. All right. Mercury retrograde. Let's see. A lot of deep work, but I feel like I'm undergoing. So you have your sun in the 6th house. All right. Gemini moon, folks. This is going to be, I remember when Uranus went through my moon, I was like, holy cow. It was like places that I was stuck forever sort of unleashed and became really open. So I would give it, I want to see what degree you had your Gemini moon in is what I would look at, because I'm very curious when you say unexpected breakup. Uranus is all about the unexpected. So the first thing that I look in your chart is when someone says unexpected, I look where are they impacted by Uranus. That's usually going to be the first thing that just like upends your whole world like that. Deep healing and trying to rebuild community. Yeah. And especially because it's in the 11th house, it's going to be asking that for a lot for you. But again, this is one where I'd want to see a little bit more, because Uranus is such a slow moving planet, the degree really counts. It's not going to be so hardcore for you the whole time. It stays in a planet for 7 years. It's going to really hone in at that, end point. Okay. All right. Aries, Sun, Leo, Moon, Cancer, Rising. Roommate randomly today just told me they're leaving apartment before rent is due tomorrow and is refusing to pay their half of the bills. Now I feel very unstable and scared. Finances are already low. First of all, I'm so sorry about that. Cancer, Leo, I'm curious what is happening. This would be either the fourth house. This could be very fourth house stuff. It could also be very second house. And with a Leo moon, that is a likely place. Like it's landing in the second house. It's asking you to like examine that. For my Leo friends, it might get a little better before it gets worse, because everything is blowing up. It's not like blessings just land. It's really blowing up first. So again, there's some of these questions I feel negligent answering because I know there's like details. If I was talking to you one-on-one, I would be like, let's look at the degrees. Let's look at where this is landing. Let's look at this just to check. Okay, let me go back up here. Let me see if there's anything else. All right, I'm going to do one more and then I'm going to close this out. Leo is my fourth house, which is empty. I'm a Taurus rising, Cancer, Sun, and Mercury, third house, Aries, Moon, Saturn, and North Node, 12th house, Venus and Mars and Gemini in my second house. What does Jupiter in Leo mean for me since the house is empty? Well, I mean, you always have, whether the house is empty. So this is a really great question because this will apply to a lot of people. Where you have an empty house is like white space for you to create. And if that's your fourth house, that just means there's no planet really directing the energy, asking for attention. And when it's your fourth house, this is not just your house, but your family of origin and what that has left you with. What was your, what did you grow up believing made a home? What did that feel like? What did it feel like sitting at the dinner table in your house growing up? What did the holidays feel like? And how do you want to shape your vision of home now? What worked for you and what didn't? You've got a lot of runway to learn this, not through hard lessons, although the beginning might be a little bit. It's always a little hairy because it blows things up and it says, look at me, look at this, give me attention. And then once you have, and it's, you'll get a lot of blessings, but it expands first. Jupiter expands. It's like Santa Claus. Think of Santa Claus, gives you a lot of blessings, but how does that guy get down the chimney? I don't know, right? So that's sort of the thing that you have to figure out first. I hope that analogy really struck. So you've got a lot of freeway. If you don't have a planet in a house, that's okay. You're okay. There could still be a lot there for you. All right. I'm going to end there. Alexa, if you'll show the next page, if you don't mind. Years more, you can, I have more astrology offerings, including a monthly astrology club that has different resources and things there, and private workshops where you can like interact more with me. I'm on TikTok. I kind of took a hiatus from posting, but I promise I do. And then I have an app. While it's mostly corporate, it is available one-on-one for folks. So you can definitely get a membership there. And there's a lot of class content, especially if you're going through a lot of healing emotionally. And then there's my newsletter. Every Thursday, I have a little snippet of what's happening with the astrology and a recommendation of the content that will best support you in this astrological weather. My background, if you want to work with me, is very trauma informed. So I try to look at all the astrology through the lens, not of like, yes, I'm very interested in the political sphere. I'm interested in like, how will this affect, all these different things, what's going to happen for, certain celebrities, et cetera. But I'm more interested in the emotional healing and how, again, those two pieces, how do I use this astrology to work with the planets and not against them to find a place of ease? And how can I use my past to understand what's ahead of me? So that is mostly it. Thank you all so much for coming. If you have any like final thoughts, and just remember to use that code for a 10% discount. And just thank you so much for being here. For those of you that came back to see me again, I'm so happy. It's awesome. I recognize some of your names, and it's totally a pleasure to get to have you back again.